He asked this only to test him. He already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 8 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. Another one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and the men sat down, about 5,000 of them. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. After the people saw the miraculous sign that Jesus did, they began to say, surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world. Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. The whole of John 6 is such an important text, a great glimpse into who Jesus was, into his humanity, into his leadership, and really the struggle of any leader, but to me as a leader in ministry, this makes me feel seen. John 6 makes me feel seen. It makes me feel understood. And so this passage is John's take on the feeding of the 5,000. There are only 2 miracles that are shared in every single gospel. It's the feeding of the 5,000. But with all this in mind, and thinking about leadership, I'm going to ask you a few questions about leadership here. You ever seen a leader with no followers? Somebody who has that leadership style. They're assertive. They're confident. They're willing to kind of say, like, let's do this. Willing to kind of boss people around. Willing to be that pioneer. But then no one follows them. It's really a weird sight. And I've seen it several times. I've seen it with groups of friends. I've seen it in the youth ministry a lot. Seen it in church where you'll see this assertive personality be like, all right, everybody, let's go. Let's go do this. Everybody get up. Let's go. And then everybody's kind of looking at each other like, really? No, I don't. And I remember one time pretty recently someone chiming in and just being like, dude, we don't even know you, man. Like, why would we get up and follow you? I know nothing about you. And then someone else chimes in, and it's kind of a dumb idea, you know? And so you see this a lot. And so I applaud people who do this. I applaud their confidence. I applaud their assertiveness, but I pity their lack of self-awareness to know that, like, you don't have the rapport. You don't have the following for people to actually do what you are pushing them to do. You don't have the rapport to lead. We used to, and I think another interesting thing about leadership, and this is shifting, it's getting worse and worse, really, or maybe better and better, depending on how you think about it, is we used to follow people if they were an authority. If we were at the church and they were like, this is the minister we hired, if this was the principal assigned to our school, if this is my teacher, if this is the politician that's been elected to office, we're going to follow them. But not really anymore. Now, even these people that have been given these places of authority, typically, we're not going to follow them just because they're an authority. They're going to have to earn it in some way. They're going to have to prove themselves to us in some way. And we're at a place now where we question authority. I mean, we question all authority, right? Even doctors, economists, scientists. I mean, we question we're questioning some of the basic tenets of In the last 5 years, we are questioning more than we've ever before. So with that in mind, I want you to think about this, is how do you choose who you follow? How do you choose who gets a say in your life? How do you decide whose words you're going to believe and shape you? And when I say how do you decide who the authorities in your life are? What teachers do you follow? What mentors? What authors do you read? What politicians do you become a fan of? Thinking of like a social media, what influencers do you follow and let shape your views? Why does that happen? And so some of it is maybe we just watch people and say like, oh, they're cool. Others like them. I want to be like them, so I'm going to follow them. Maybe it's something else about this person's character. They seem to care about me. This person seems to value me. And so I want to be like them. I'm going to follow them. Or they seem wise. I look at their life and I look at their lifestyle. They seem to have some wisdom. I'm going to follow them. Sometimes it is just proximity. Sometimes it is, well, this is the leader that was kind of put in my life. This was the person hired at my school. This was the college I could get into. This was the algorithm on my phone that's putting these influencers in front of me. Sometimes it just happens. But maybe you're following a person because there's something in it for you. There's some kind of benefit. Maybe it's a financial one. This politician, what their policies benefit me. Either I get something out of it, or they don't take as much from me. Maybe with friends, maybe it's a social thing. If I'm in with this person, I won't get picked on. If I'm in with this person, I'll be cool, and I can be in with these other people, and I'll feel safe, and I'll feel secure. If I'm with this person, I'm on the winning team. Or maybe another benefit it gives you is you really like what the person says. The person's really affirming your beliefs, who you are, making you feel more confident, making you feel secure, making you feel right. And so if this person's telling me what I want to hear, I'm going to keep listening to them. I'm going to keep following. I'm going to let them have a lot of authority in my life because I like what they're saying. So why do you follow who you follow? Leads me to this question, is why do people follow bad leaders? And by bad leader, I think there's a lot of immoral, ignoble leaders that have good leadership skills, but are leading people in like a really bad direction. Leaders who they have the skill, but they're bad. They're doing bad things with that power and with that leadership and that following that they've been given. And so there's a lot of answers here. One that I think of is they are either tricked or coerced into following bad leaders. Maybe because the person is engaging and charismatic. I probably like one of the best examples of someone with great leadership skills who used it horribly was Hitler, right? Like there was he had a charisma that made people follow him, but he did horrible things with it. Maybe they see themselves in that leader somehow. This person is like me. This person gets me. So they're for me. So they're going to serve me. They're going to help me. They're going to do what's in my best interest. Maybe in some ways, bad leaders create a transactional relationship. If you follow me, even in these immoral things, even in these bad things, there might be something in it for you. You're going to get what you want in some way. And so we follow bad leaders because they give us something we want, and then we put up with all the other bad stuff we know is going on. I'll put up with this bad stuff because they're helping me in this way. And that's not just politically. I think that happens at school. That happens in social relationships. This person's kind of a jerk, but I like being in with their group, and so I'm not going to have an issue with that. And then I think another one you can kind of see in this picture is fear. We follow bad leaders out of fear. Fear of them, fear of punishment, fear of being socially ostracized, fears of I'm going to follow this person because if I don't, I might be bullied and I might be in their crosshairs if I don't follow them. And I want to stay out of their crosshairs, so I'm gonna be on their team. I'm with government, it could be fear of fines, could be loss of privileges, could be loss of rights. And so we follow them because we're afraid of them. But also, here's an interesting one, is we follow bad leaders out of fear of an enemy that we think they'll protect us from. Fear of real or imagined. Real or imagined. So there's this, and again, like thinking, I feel bad using this even as an example. He's a bad leader. But Hitler was protecting people from the damage of Jews. There's this imagined enemy, and he's saying, I will protect you from them. And sometimes it's a real enemy. It could have been, for a while, it was communism. Then it was terrorism. Now it seems to be the other political party. I will protect you from them. And so we follow bad leaders sometimes out of fear. So think about that when you think about the leaders in your life, not just political, really. I'm thinking more, people at work, people, the influencers. Why do you follow these people? John 6 gives us a good glimpse into why people follow Jesus. And when I say why people follow, I mean why, when Jesus was physically in the flesh, living on the earth as a human, why those people 2,000 years ago followed him. Not why we follow him today. But why did he have such a following then? Hint. It wasn't because he was doing what bad leaders do. He wasn't using fear. He wasn't using trickery. He wasn't using coercion. He wasn't going to force people into giving him affection. He did not do what a lot of leaders do today. In verse 2 that Adam read, it says, people were following him because they saw miracles. They saw that he had power. They saw that he had something spectacular, and they wanted to see more. They wanted to see, man, what's this guy all about? He's different. Then verse 14 says, he's the one we've been waiting on. He is the prophet. He is this person from God. He's someone holy. He's someone special. And so that's why they're following. Something's different about him. Later on, when Jesus encounters these people that he fed, I think Clay preached about this a few weeks ago, he kind of calls them out and says, you're really following me not because of the miracles. There's a select group. He says, you were just following me because I gave you food. You were just following me because of what I could give you. You wanted some kind of transaction. And kind of what he's saying is, and once that transaction's not there, once you're not getting from me what you want, you're not going to follow me anymore. And that's kind of what happened. So some of us follow leaders in general because there's something in it for us. And that's kind of what Jesus was saying. You are following me because there's something in it for you. You're following me as if I'm a transactional leader. But other reasons people follow him is that I think they really believe this guy cares about me. He cared about the people no one else cared about. He listened to them. And in some ways, he did kind of stand in the gap for them. And I think he did have a very powerful, compelling teaching. But I think it was mostly his actions outside of the teachings that made people listen to his teaching. I think Jesus knew that usually people needed to be led more than they needed to be preached to. I think Jesus knew that. But when they saw that he cared about them, that he was a good leader, they were willing to listen. And so in John 6, after the feeding of the 5,000, he gives this really tough teaching about eating his flesh and drinking his blood. And people are like, that's weird. And I can't handle that. And so these transactional people who are following this leader because of what he gives them, because maybe he'll tell me he gave me food. Maybe he's going to tell me what I want to hear. What's in it for me? As soon as Jesus was telling people something they didn't want to hear, they left. They were only in it for themselves. And that's how we follow a lot of leaders today. As soon as they're not giving me what I want, I'm out. So they weren't really followers of Jesus. They were just fans, fair weather fans. And so after he gives his teaching, crowds start leaving. People start saying, this guy's too much. I don't like what he's saying. I'm out. And Jesus, in a moment where, again, I feel very seen because I've lost people from ministries before. I've had people leave youth ministries and churches, and it's hurtful. And it's hard. And Jesus looks at his disciples, says, are you guys going to leave me too? Because he feels abandoned. Feels like everybody's left. And Peter says, where would we go? You are the Holy One of God. They followed Jesus not because of what he would give them, not because there was some transaction. They followed him because of who he was, because of who he was and what they saw him do. And that is the best reason to follow someone. It's the best way to have people follow you, because if you're following someone, if you're following Jesus because of who he is, then you can handle when he tells you something you don't want to hear. Instead of saying, oh, I don't like that leader, I'm going somewhere else, you say, I better change myself. I better adapt to what Jesus is telling me. And so you think about that, the good leaders in your life, the ones you really follow, when they say something you don't want to hear, you don't leave them. You don't just say, oh, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to go find another article or blog to discredit this or whatever. You say, well, I trust this person. And if they say this, I'm at least going to entertain this. I'm at least going to think about this. And so that's kind of what the disciples, they follow him because of who he is. And that's a good way. That's good leadership. And it creates better followers. They follow out of love. They follow out of conviction and belief, not fear, not handouts, not coercion, and not some kind of transaction. So when you think about following Jesus, you might need to think, why? What is my motivation here? Think about being a member of a church. What is my motivation here? But having all this in the back of your mind makes chapter 6, verse 15 very interesting. This is the end. This is after the feeding of the 5,000. Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. They were trying to crown him king. They were trying to give him power. They were saying, here you go, take it. And he was running. That is so counterintuitive. That is so not something that most people would do. And so, and again, just looking at where we're at, this is before his difficult teaching when they're trying to do this. A lot of people in that position would have said, yes, crown me. This is what I've been wanting. This is the ladder I've been trying to work my way up to. This has been my goal the entire time, was to get this power, this political power, this fame, and this love of the people. Yes, thank you. Mission accomplished. But Jesus, in this weird counterintuitive move of downward mobility, runs from it, hides. I'm not going to do that. Why? Why not take that power? What does this say about who Jesus is and maybe who we should be? Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. It wasn't his goal. He isn't here to take control and force people to do his will, because that doesn't create true disciples. That's not true disciples if you're being forced or coerced. And again, we talked about a couple of weeks ago about church consumerism. I'm going to go to the church that serves me and gives me what I want. That's not true disciples. And Jesus knew that. If you're coercing, if you're just giving people transactions, giving them what they want, they're not going to be real followers of God. He wanted to be followed out of love, conviction, and changing people's hearts, not force. And if he became king, kind of what would have happened. If he got this political power, they would have followed him for a different reason. And again, the best followers follow because who the leader is, not because who's been granted authority, and not because what the leader can give them. So there's something really powerful in Jesus' refusal to seize power. And people wanted him to do it. This isn't the only time where people are like, dude, Jesus, you should take power. We should throw out Rome. I mean, John the Baptist, when he was in prison, was like, hey, what's up? When are we going to start knocking some heads? When are we going to start busting some people? Whenever they went through Samaria, the disciples were like, hey, Jesus, let's call down some fire, man. Let's wipe this place off of the map. I appreciate Steve bringing up that was part of one of the biggest temptations of Jesus was something that you see Satan offer it to him, but it happened throughout his ministry is you should take political power. I can give you all the kingdoms of the world. Isn't that what you want? You should take all this power and then you can do whatever you want. Then you'll have absolute control. I think that was a major temptation of Jesus that he had to constantly say no to. He had to constantly run from. And that's the way it should be. I am much more skeptical of a leader who wants and is trying to seize power, who tries to seek it. And then, once they get it, what do they do with it? One, they try to get more. Two, they're trying to secure that power that they have and make sure this is mine. I'm not giving it out. This is mine. And again, that's not, I mean, it is a political statement, but it's also a statement of church leadership, work, school, any power you have. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. It is dangerous once we get a hold of it. And so whenever I see people aching for positions of power, I'm a little nervous. What do you want to do with that power? And so it's something kind of funny I've seen before here is whenever like we do an elder selection and we kind of pick these people to be elders, and there's some guys who are like, not me. I can't be an elder. I can't, I'm not worthy, or I don't want that position right now. And to me, whenever they say that, I'm thinking, all right, you passed the first test. I like that attitude. Now, but not, that's not saying you shouldn't, the people who take it first time, that's great too. But there is something I like about that attitude of I'm not just hungry. It's not like, oh, it's about time you've elected me elder and things are going to change around here. If you do that, I'm a little suspicious. I'm a little suspicious of what you're up to there. And so I like that kind of hesitancy towards taking power out of humility. I think there is something good about that. But then at the same time, we need leaders to step up. So balance out those two statements. Brown and I, whenever we were in college, we did a Let's Start Talking mission trip to Mozambique. And in Mozambique, the government requires there to be a president of the Church of Christ. And of course, as a good Church of Christ, well, we have one. His name is Jesus. But no, they need like a physical person that can answer for the churches of Christ. So if there's anything going, they can kind of say, hey, what's going on here? Hey, what are you guys up to? And we were in Maputo, which is the biggest city in Mozambique. And the missionary there, great guy, very spiritual, very loving, very humble. He planted like 7 or 8 churches there. And it kind of reminds me of Paul. He kind of oversees them and kind of helps them and guides these guys. He sets up leaders there and guides them. And I remember asking him when he was telling me about a president of the Church of Christ in Mozambique. And I said, you ever thought about running for that office? And he said, no, absolutely not. There's 2 guys fighting right now for that office, and it is ugly. And I will not insert myself into that. Wherever there is a struggle for power, Christ has no part in. And I thought, someone crown this guy king of the churches of Christ in Mozambique, because that is the kind of leader you want, is someone who's not going to go in there and fight and get ugly and think the ends justify the means, and I want this power. And so I love that. But it's the people who don't have a lust for power that often I feel more kind of comfortable with. And so oftentimes the best leaders don't seize power. Sometimes it falls in their lap. Sometimes it's given to them. Or they don't have the power in the traditional sense. Jesus did not have power in the traditional sense of political or economic power. And that's not a hard and fast rule. Oh, if you do like Jesus, people are going to make you leaders. That's not always the case. Sometimes it won't be. But I want to challenge you this morning to think, are you tempted by power? Where are you trying to seize or gain power? Are you trying to keep it and wield it all for you? Do you think you know what's best to do with that power? There's a wrong way to get it and a wrong way to keep it. And I think there's a lot of ways where it is not following in the footsteps of Jesus. And then on the other side of that, are you putting too much hope and trust in people that you have ceded power to? Who are the influencers? Who are the voices in your life that you may need to kind of take a step back and say, hey, wait a second. Should I be following them? Are you following someone out of fear? And fear is never a good reason to follow anyone. I don't think God wants to be followed out of fear. So we can put our trust and our hope in Jesus, and we should follow in his difficult and counterintuitive ways. And that may not always make us CEO. That may not always land us that job. Again, sometimes that works out pretty well, but not always. But we follow in the ways of Jesus not for this benefit, not to be more successful at work. We follow in the ways of Jesus because of who he is, a servant, a holy man of love, the Messiah, God. If you're here this morning and you want to submit to him, if you want to fully follow him, or if you need prayers of the congregation, we invite you to come now as together we stand and sing.